Starting like a fucking Joe Rogan podcast. Something going on before it.
Well, it's what keeps this podcast interesting.
Fucking Bro Rogan, bro. Bro Rogan.
Bro Jogan.
All right, Alba, take it away.
All right. So, me and Mr. Swede met up today out in right outside DC. We didn't really plan as far as like where is shit going off. I figured, it'd be easier just to I didn't think it would be that hard to find it, and I was more or less right. But we started heading into DC off the Keith Francis Bridge, and headed towards M Street. At that point, you don't really see anything because M Street is not going to be where this is. M Street is like, quaint bakeries and Gucci stores. We started heading towards the Capitol building. The first time we had that shit was getting rowdy was we'd already seen one or two. So what they do in DC when you have days like this is they will block off more or less every other street. The reason they do that is they are shepherding you into a certain direction so that they're not going to outright stop you from getting to the Capitol building because they know that they can't do that. What they will do is make it as difficult as possible, or not difficult, but as extra as possible so that they can limit the amount of people actually there at any given time at that source of interest. So in this case, the Capitol. So that's how we were able to kind of say, okay, we're going in the right direction because they're starting to funnel us. Then we saw the sirens started kicking up, and a motorcade of about 8 or 9 cop cars racing down, followed by two ambulances. So we didn't know this at the time, but I would almost put my firstborn child on bet that was in response to the girl getting shot, because they were heading towards the Capitol. We kept driving, kind of took some pictures, some video. We ended up parking about 20 minutes from the actual Capitol building. At that point, it's like maybe I don't know the exact, somewhere between 2 and 3. When we got out, once I was able to see the Capitol building, so to give some perspective, I was at the Capitol building. That's where the last rally was, and it was nothing like this. So first off, they gated on the last rally. They gated the area in terms of the police, the Capitol Police, where the line was on the lawn. So you couldn't actually touch the building. You couldn't get near the building. You couldn't get onto the steps. And it was relatively peaceful. You had a lot more young people in that one. Relatively peaceful. No incidents there until late in the night. The difference today was immediate. So you walk up, and there's American flag that's literally the size of a good-sized house draped over the so they put up scaffolds for Biden's inauguration. These scaffolds had maybe 60 people climbing on top of each one, and the flag was draped over the side of it. And this is like a monumental flag, like a huge fucking flag. But I'm just kind of describing the picture of it. The scaffolding are around either side of the Capitol building steps. Immediately we could tell it was almost like the most packed water slide you've ever seen in your life. Like the stairs going up completely packed with people, 60 people each on top of the scaffold, literally climbing up 2-story tall scaffolds. You had maybe 20, 30,000 people on the lawns itself, and then more packed back to back on the actual Capitol building. In between those 2 scaffolds, that's the Capitol steps. So we started taking pictures, worked our way in. Swedish was like, how close are you trying to get? I was like, as close as we can get. He was like, my boy, who kept going up the steps. The steps are completely congested. It took us 5 to 10 minutes just to get up them. At that point, you're seeing the chanting. They're stomping the scaffolds, in rhythm to the music, to the chants. We get up finally to the mid-level, and we had to go up into the building, sort of. It's like an outbuilding to get up to the top. The top looks almost like an amphitheater. If you ever see inaugurations, that almost like theater kind of infrastructure. Do you know what I'm talking about with the layered steps in a half circle? So that's the area where it had already been taken over. We get up there, and the police have one line. The Capitol Police have one line separating the theater seats from the actual entrance. We stood there for maybe 5 minutes. Talked to some of the people there. People were, as we're going in, there's trickling out, and these people were clearly tear gassed. We started working our way around. That front entrance was, they were pushing back and forth. Like I was seeing people try to, like the people were throwing stuff at the cops every once in a while. They were pushing people back off the line. One guy got his hair ripped out by a cop who tried to grab a hold of him when he got too close. Behind them, you see the Capitol entrance where they had already broken the windows, already broken the door, because previously, before we arrived, they actually broke into the Capitol. They went all the way to the Senate floor. We talked to a guy who was leaving, and he was like, "Yeah, I got a picture with Pence's Bible." But anyway, we stood there for a bit. There was a bunch of press around. I talked to a few of them, not on camera, but just wanted to kind of know who it was, that kind of thing. You had Channel 1, you had CNN crews, the whole shebang. We started working our way around left because it was really the only area left to go. They had cordoned off the right, but also it did seem like there was stuff happening. So as soon as we come around, you have the pillars that surround the whole building, right? There's almost like a small enclosure, but it's a long hallway. So we start working our way down, and it starts getting packed again. And that's when we start seeing the side entrance that they had managed to break into now. So they closed off, they did a police line out front, closing off the front entrance. And the pressure of people went around to the left side and broke in through the side door. So by the time we got out there, there was a very real, like, people holding the doors open. You have a guy, you can actually see it in the video I posted, the one guy in particular, face to face with, I don't know if he was leadership of the Capitol Police, but he's screaming at him, "We have a right to own this building. We have a right to step in this building constitutionally. This is our house. You have no right to stop us." Da 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 da. The other guy's screaming back. He's not screaming. He's actually the police officer was fairly reasonable, but he's telling him, "It's my sworn duty to protect the people inside the building. I understand, but I cannot let you in." Da 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 da. That escalated, and while they're having this screaming match, the doors are actively being like tug of warred. They're also spraying the extinguisher to kind of get people to go back. It's not working. So even when they started spraying the pepper gas, people were not moving. People were holding onto those doors while getting sprayed in the face. Anyway, as they're continuing to argue, the other guy's getting more and more agitated. He ends up just pepper spraying the cop in the face. Immediately, he retreats into the door, and then 4 or 5 cops push out and immediately pepper spray the entire area. So me and Swede, at that point, the exact moment it happened, they pushed off. Once that guy pepper sprayed the cop, he pushed that guy back like down 5. I don't even know how far he fell down the steps, but there were steps right down. That guy was flying. Because of that, the guy to the left of him who was holding the left door moved back. Someone else went in to try to grab the door, and that's when they started spraying. And when I say spray, like this was an actual cloud of, you couldn't see. Not because you couldn't see, but because there was so much smoke in the air, even if it didn't affect your eyes, you would not be able to see. I went blind for a second. I tried to put my mask over my face. That I didn't get hit by the first wave. When I opened back up my eyes, they did a second blast of pepper spray, and that one got me. I moved off to the left of the door. When I turned around, they were still struggling over the door, but it did what it needed to do. Insofar as in the time that we were pepper sprayed, the cops were able to close the 2 doors and retreat back into the Capitol. So what they did is they moved back. They moved the line back so that they removes them the ability to actually get in, and they can consolidate the line. So once the guy did what he did. He pepper sprayed the cop. They were like, okay, we're going back. It didn't stop anybody from trying. By the time I found Swede, who got fucked up by it. I mean, I got fucked up too, but he was a little bit closer to me. But regardless, by the time we reconnected, because we went different directions, they were already prying the doors open. I don't know how successful they were because that's when they started throwing flashbangs and rubber bullets. So we regrouped maybe 50, 60 steps away. And that's when they started doing a phalanx where they started from the theater area. That line of cops that was originally holding that line in like a lat. What's the word I'm looking for? Not lateral.
Phalanx.
No, it's perpendicular. Am I stupid?
Parallel?
Parallel. Hey, I am stupid. All right, parallel line to the theater. That line kind of rotated, and they started pushing everybody from the theater out towards the left side. As they did that, they started throwing the flashbangs. They started throwing, shooting rubber bullets. And I believe there was some pepper spray, but I asked Sweet on that. That's when we left. There were ropes all around the walls. So that's definitely, someone said earlier, they were using almost painter scaffolding. That's pretty much what they were for. I actually saw once they started throwing flashbangs, one guy grabbed the rope. He started rappelling down the fucking side of the Capitol. So this was something new. When we arrived, by the time we got up to the Capitol, that's when we first started hearing people yelling about the girl that died. So they were yelling stuff like, you killed a 17-year-old girl. Whose side are you on? You're supposed to defend the people. You call us criminals, but the criminals are the ones inside that building. And that was really the general sentiment. Like, there was genuine rage in the group of people that were there, especially on that upper area of the Capitol. And I really think the reason, because the tone was a completely universal change from the one that's below, from the people who were on the lawn and even on the steps. And I think what it is, honestly, is they saw this girl die. The trickle of people leaving versus going in, it was a huge difference. So you had easily, 100 people on the stairs alone, and you had maybe 5 or 10 leaving at a time. So if that follows, then the people who were really up there, when we got up there, were likely people who had already been up there. So I don't think there was a massive, turnover of people. And when we were leaving, we were maybe 20 minutes, 30 minutes after that girl supposedly got shot. Because I do think that's what the ambulances were responding to. So I don't know exactly what happened there. I've seen the reports and I've seen the pictures of the cop with the gun, of her herself. But that was a huge factor, if I had to guess, into why the rage and the level of violence was where it was at. One guy screamed, "You killed a 17-year-old girl." The cop said nothing. He waved his hand and just kind of walked the other way. I think this is, I don't know, crazy day. From there, we left the area, went back to the car, paid for parking. By the time we got some food and came back, it was already dead. But yeah, that's everything I can think of at the moment.
So, I think the question to ask about this, because we know already which side or what parts of this are lawfully acceptable, right? Which ones are lawfully right, but who honestly gives a shit about laws? They don't really mean anything because slavery was a law. So, I guess which part of this is morally acceptable, right?
So you're pointing to false laws shouldn't be upheld. when you talk about slavery.
I'm saying that I don't really care about what's lawfully acceptable. I really care what's about morally acceptable. So, do you think, in your opinion, what you saw from the rioters, right? Because there were people that weren't breaking in, correct? They were just standing outside.
Yes.
Okay, so
Yes.
from the rioters, do you think their perspective was morally justified from what you saw?
So it's a complicated one because on one hand, I don't think they were morally unjustified. I can't imagine many people not reacting in something of a violent manner when they watch a 90-pound girl get shot by a cop when they're protesting a building, when they're protesting corruption. On the other hand,
that's what I mean.
Is it useful? It's not useful in a direct way, but I don't think it's a moral thing. I think this is something that is like, well, what were you expecting? You know, at the end of the day, why were you shooting actual bullets at what at that point were just protesters? I mean, yeah, they're coming into the building, but there is legal right to come into that building. That's established.
They didn't.
And beyond.
They didn't walk into the building, right? They broke into it.
Right.
Forcefully.
So then it becomes a question of is the crime closing the doors to the public, or is the crime breaking the doors that were closed to the public?
I'd say breaking the doors that were closed to the public is the crime, right? Like if you break a door down to random person's house, that's a crime, right?
That's where the discussion goes into: is the Capitol building open to the public, or is this a private place that can't be accessed?
I think under the certain circumstance, it's a ceremonial thing.
From what I understand, all federal buildings are protected in terms of you can go in them. This was the argument for Whitmer as well when they stormed that building. It was like, we have a legal right to be in this building. This is the people's building, and that's true. But there's also, okay, you have insanely angry people. What is essentially a mob. A girl just died, and you want to come in this building, and we have 150, representatives of people that you have a burning hatred in your heart for. I can get that, right?
What do you think that mob is doing there? Like, why do you think they're storming and breaking into the Capitol building while multiple political officials are verifying the results for the Georgia election?
So there's not just one reason, and it's not just one reason for all the people either.
I mean, no, of course not.
I'm not sure that was the plan. I'm sure that you had some people who wouldn't mind breaking into the Capitol building before they got there, but I don't think the goal was to break in. I heard some of them talking about how it actually started, like how they initially started breaking through the lines. It sounds like one person just jumped the fence, and then other people followed.
Well, yeah, that's kind of how the herd mentality works, right? Like one person
right,
and everyone else kind of follows along. The mill,
right?
Whatever those small rodents are.
I don't remember exactly lemmings.
Lemmings,
what you're talking about, but yeah. So I don't think it was a planned thing. I think especially once that girl died, it ratcheted up. As far as the reason that they were there in the first place, I mean, there's 1,000, and I don't even think they're necessarily partisan. Election fraud is going to be the one that you see touted on the news, extremists for Trump, and I don't think that that's accurate. I think it's a part of it. You did see Stop the Steal signs, but I didn't, the last time I was at this rally, Stop the Steal was all you heard. When I was at this rally, I barely heard that. What I did hear was oath breakers, let us work, let us earn. I heard people, rallying cries against the establishment, Pelosi, McConnell, and you had all the extremes. You had people who were denouncing it. I saw a group of 6 to 7, older gentlemen. They were wearing fatigues. They weren't military, but they were, I'm guessing, some sort of militia or group. And they were, I overheard them talking, and they're going, we swore an oath to protect this building, and now we're standing with these assholes. And so there were definitely people who were looking around and saying, this isn't good. On the other hand, you had people literally screaming, shoot them, shoot the cops. So this is this was a lot of different groups. The FBI is claiming that a bus full of Antifa successfully infiltrated the march. So that you had all sorts of ideologies, all sorts of groups here. It's majority right, but that in itself, it's like it's not a monolith. Especially in this year, there's no such thing as a political monolith. So as far as intentions, goals, election fraud just doesn't even begin to cover the reasons people were there.
Okay, so I think that the people that were screaming "fucking shoot the cops," blah blah blah, stuff like that. I think precautionary actions should be taken because of those people. Because that mentality can really spiral out of control, especially when I wouldn't say a large group, but you said a partial group was shouting it. Especially
there was actually one guy. It was one guy, and there were no guns in the crowd. I didn't see it in the entire time there. I didn't see a single gun. There are people who get drawn to these kind of things who are just not well.
No, of course,
right?
Yeah, of course. People are gonna come in here with the idea of starting a brand new revolution, right? And then some people are gonna come in here with the idea of I don't know, protesting outside the Capitol building.
Right, and some people are just at their limit. I mean, look at the guy who did Nashville.
I'm looking at some. Is this the same thing? Hold on. Okay, no, this isn't the same thing. Carry on.
Yeah, I mean, some people are also just at their limit. So there's a whole lot of reasons to end up in front of that Capitol building today. And is it morally justified? I don't know, because it's tricky. I think a lot of it is valid, and anger comes from somewhere, not from nowhere. It's not an initial emotion. You have to have pain, you have to have lack of control to have anger, and the level of genuine passion that I saw today, I'm hesitant to say that they're necessarily unreasonable. There's a point where, what are you expecting out of people? After everything that people have been through this year, what do you expect from BLM? What do you expect from the right? What do you expect from Antifa? What do you expect from the Proud Boys? What do you expect from Trumpers? What do you expect from Bidens? We're all at our fucking edge here, and the only thing we all have in common is none of our needs are being met, and none of our demands are being met. So moral, it's hard.
It says here that a group had erected a gallows outside.
I haven't heard that one.
I didn't see it, but I don't know.
Like a noose thing.
No, yeah, there are pictures, and
okay.
Yeah, it like for all the jokes about getting guillotines and stuff. I must be honest, that was pretty kind of funny.
I mean, yeah, but okay, so you have people that genuinely believe that, though, right? Like, this is the same problem with Charlottesville. Like, you have people that genuinely believe these things. So I don't think that they were just breaking into the Capitol building for no fucking reason. Some of those people genuinely had an idea to fucking find Mitch McConnell or Nancy Pelosi and just kill them. Like that's why they were escorted out of that area. And that's why some guards were protecting the door. Like I'd imagine the one the girl was being lifted through. Whether or not she should have been shot is a completely different discussion. But I think it's a lot like the Area 51 thing, like what a lot of military officials are threatening people with. Like, hey, if you come fucking near us, if you try to break in, we're going to use lethal force in this area. Was that the necessary action? If a 90-pound girl is being lifted through a small window, could you probably detain her? Yes, but like the discussion we were having earlier, we don't know what she has on her. These are a bunch of very angry, very emotional people, and again, this is a whataboutism, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or what ifism. What if she had a gun? What if this? What if that? And
of course, that's a valid concern for the Capitol Police. Yes.
Yeah. So I think the police are less responsible, and the people that tried to lift her through the window and put her life in danger in that sense are more responsible. That doesn't mean that that doesn't mean
they were allowed to go in. Like the cops, while they were thinking, okay, hopefully we can control like the flow, but we'll give them room. Like they were the ones who allowed them to go in.
But I mean, beyond that, I'm willing to give the Capitol Police benefit of the doubt. That doesn't mean to me this is a lost situation. The Capitol Police is entirely different from the normal police. They're
right.
similar
They have a different set of rules, right? That
yes,
you have to abide
their
by.
duty is to protect, and when your duty is to protect, much like the Secret Service, they don't play. They're gonna do what they're gonna do. At the other end, like Biggest said, they were allowing people in. So I want to see more about exactly what happened before I like really get into that. But I don't also, just because I'm willing to like, if it turns out that there was legitimate concern there, okay, I can entertain that idea. I don't really buy it, but I can entertain it. But here's the other side of that. In doing what they did, they created what may have been just a protest and just a lot of loud.
I think it went beyond a protest when they broke into the Capitol building. If you have to forcibly put your way through something, you're obviously not meant to be there, and actions have to be taken against you.
Same can be said about a lot of riots this past year.
I mean, yeah. I mean, riots are. I don't want to say riots are bad regardless. No, because these people that are claiming fraud election under the presidency in Georgia State have got a voice. They've had a voice for the last few months, right? This isn't the voice of the unheard. Things have been done. They've done recounts in multiple states for Trump, and I don't know if they've done any recounts on the Georgia election when it comes to the Senate. But
this is my thing. It's not just the election. The election is the least heard issue I heard when I was there.
I don't know. It seems like the most heard issue when they're all carrying around Trump.
Well, you're also you're talking to somebody who's on the ground or with people yelling there.
It's not that they don't care about Stop the Steal. If they're a Trump voter, they probably think that it was stolen, right? But it's not what I was hearing. It's not what they were yelling. And when you're in this kind of reaction, when you're doing this, when you're most people, when you're in this kind of scenario, and this is a scenario that's fairly new to this demographic, you're not really capable of crafting, manufactured takes. Like you're not going to be what you're yelling is going to be what's most important to you in that moment.
Okay, so my question is
the fact that I heard so much less about election fraud than I did about oath breakers. Let us earn, let us eat, give us our rights back, stop feeding China over us, stop, giving away all our money and giving us nothing. That's the type of shit they think about.
Hello?
Did he cut out?
I think he cut out. Alibi, are you there?
Sorry, I don't know what happened there. That's the type of shit that is.
Oh wow, the quality.
I'm sorry, let me retract my thought. But what I heard most was that stuff, not election fraud, and what they were talking about. I don't believe is necessarily partisan. I think that's a commonly a lot of this stuff that they were yelling. It's different terms: oath breaker, fuck 12, left, right, blue,
you heard fuck
red,
12?
up, down.
Okay, so my question is
it's different names for the same shit. And I think a lot of people are at this same place, and I think that's why you're seeing so much similarity between the storming of the Capitol today and a lot of these riots that we especially saw in July and June. It's just like, okay, well, we have people pinned against the wall. What are we expecting?
So, at what point do you start keeping these people from continuing? Because, you can't just let them get to Congress members face to face. That's extremely dangerous for the Congress members. So at what point do you start defending those Congress members? And at what point are the police allowed to say this is enough, you can't go any farther forward because you're putting other people's lives in danger, including your own?
So hold on, Alibi. The way you just stated that though is you really targeted the group. So you're saying this
because
group,
the group is the
hold on. You're saying this group is endangering Congress members, but what about the other violent groups that have happened in the past half year that have targeted civilians and innocent bystanders.
What are the
When
other
do you
groups?
when do you draw the line on them?
What do the other groups have to do with this one, though?
So those are both fair points. To respond to your question, the reason that I think you're confused, I'm not advocating for violence against the people in there, and I don't think that anyone there necessarily was. Although they're storming the fucking Capitol building, but here's where the rubber hits the road, right? And I'm sorry, give me a second to collaborate my thoughts, but
go ahead.
Can you repeat the question one more time?
So my question is it's ridiculous to assume that there aren't people there that are there to physically harm Congress members, right?
Right. Okay, so here's the thing. It's not wrong for the Capitol Police to protect these people. As much as they deserve to know where the people are, they also deserve to be protected. It's not wrong for the people out there to reach the level that they reach when they watch a 17-year-old girl get shot on the steps of the Capitol building.
But they already went to that distance before she got shot. That just escalated even further.
That's what's been reported, is that the Capitol Police were allowing people into the Capitol building. For whatever reason, they reacted. That's the part that isn't being reported right now, and the part that needs to be if there's any camera footage, different angles, that'll come out if it's there.
Right.
But my thing is, it's not accepting that one side is not wrong does not necessarily make the Capitol Police wrong. Where it is wrong, where there is fault, the congressmen and the House representatives, the senators, they should have just left.
Mm-hmm.
There's nobody to protect if they're not there.
So did you end up getting inside of the Capitol building, or were you outside?
By the time I got there, there was no way in. The fight at the door was to get in, and they weren't able to get in. I don't know if they maybe managed to get further in when I was there. They definitely got in, if not, there's reports that they were let in, and then when they were kicked out, I think they broke back in. Because the doors were broken down.
I'm talking, so there's a distinct difference on what's going outside of the building and what's going on inside of the building, right?
Right.
Because you have two different people, because the people refusing to go inside have a very different mindset than the people that have already broken in.
It's not refusing. The people outside were all consistently moving up. So
they were all marching towards the door. There was nobody that was like, I'm going to stay outside?
I mean, you probably had some people who just were chilling, but for the majority, people were moving in. You have to realize how congested it was. You have 30,000 people.
Right.
So they're moving out, but there's only so much space up top. And as it started to escalate, the police on the left side withdrew. The police on the front side pushed out, which I imagine would have pushed the people at the top of the steps further down, and the people to the left of the steps further left.
Okay, so do you have any way of telling us what exactly happened? Like, I'm not meaning to make this an interrogation, but do you have any way of telling us exactly what was going on inside of the Capitol building to people who already made it to the floor and to people who already broke into the hallways?
The only viewpoint I have on that is when we were in front of the front entrance. Once we come up from the theater area, we were able to actually get up to the door, and just inside the door, you had a line of Capitol Police.
I actually had a question for you. Where did you post that video? I'm trying to pin it.
YouTube. Proaclin party channel.
No, okay.
So, what I'm going off of... Oh, no, go ahead.
From people who had actually gone in who were talking.
Okay.
One of the guys was like, maybe 22, tear gassed. I asked him if he got inside. He was like, "Yeah, I got a picture with Pence's Bible." That's so. I mean, there's pictures of from inside the floor. Apparently, someone stole Pelosi's stand. Somebody.
Oh yeah, I saw that one. Yeah.
I just posted
they were in there. They legitimately did storm the Capitol.
So, the perspective I'm speaking from is evident or footage of people that already made it in there, that have like made it into the house. They're putting their feet on the desks. They're walking around the hallways, stuff like that, right? And a majority of these people, at least from the footage I've seen, I mean, footage can be misrepresented in many ways. You can show things, you can not show things. But a lot of them, especially in this one clip where it was a group of disabled people, physically disabled, that were screaming, "Stop the steal, stop the steal." And they started interviewing people, and they were like, they're not serving us. And that could be to your point of like, let us eat, right? But to think that, I mean, this all comes back to like these Capitol Police have a job to protect people. And if they see someone as a potential threat, right, after they've already warned you, hey, if you cross this threshold or you try to cross this threshold, we're going to have to take action against you.
Right. Well, think of it like this. When we go to war with another country, it's the decision of the head, right? It's government deciding to war against government. It's the people that go to war. And they oftentimes don't actually have issues with their combatant, and sometimes there's camaraderie there. You know, we understand each other because we neither of us really have a choice. We're fighting for what we believe in. Extrapolate that to this. The Capitol Police have a job to do. They're going to do their job. These motherfuckers don't play. They're going to do their job. They're reasonable. They'll speak to you, and they'll reason with you. But there's a line, and when they hit it, they don't play. The other side of it is you have a group who saw what they saw, are there for why they're there, and they're pushing for what they believe in as well. The responsibility, in my eyes, ultimately lies with the people who refuse to leave. The congressmen, the politicians, they should have left. They should have just left. The building, there's enough of an argument constitutionally that the people have a right to exist in federal buildings. You can walk into any police, they'll discourage you and they'll try to fuck with you. But you have a legal right to go into any federal, building, whether that's a police station, a firehouse. You can go inside, you can take pictures, you can do whatever. That's a federal building.
But do you have the right to like break shit in there and like mess shit up and take people's stands and
so the reason
break tables and chairs?
No, but they also.
I'm not trying to put capital damage over like a cause because I'm heavily.
I get what you're saying, and I don't discount it. It's not that it's not breaking the law. Once you start destructing property, yeah, you're technically breaking the law. And once you start shooting a girl who just walked through a building that you already invited her in, that's probably breaking the law too. So that's why I'm like, I don't even want to argue on that basis, because these are two groups who, relatively, they're not the actual decision makers. The people who had the most power to resolve this situation didn't. To expect 30,000 people to leave a building just because you tell them to is insane. And to expect the Capitol Police not to protect the people they're charged to protect is also insane. The one thing that wasn't insane is, hey, we're in a building. They want in the building. Let's leave the building.
So I'm going to explain to you why that's a really, really bad idea to make them leave the building, because you have a group of angry people, right? And if they figure out, hey, they're outside, we can get them from any fucking angle we want to, that's a very bad idea, right? You want to keep them in a closed environment where you have eyes on every single area that they can get to their target.
Well, here's the thing is there was no weapons in the crowd and nobody was being violent in the crowd.
I mean,
up until when the woman got shot, no one was being violent.
I mean, people were breaking stuff. People were breaking stuff, and they were threatening to get physical. I mean, they were threatening to get physical before the girl got shot.
So I want to give you your answer. And it comes down to logistics, right? You have, picture the building, in front of it you have what is basically maybe 2 football fields. It's going up to it. On either side, it's blocked off. So when you come into DC on days like this, like I was saying earlier, they block off strategic streets. The reason they do that is so that they can control A, how many people actually are able to reach that area at a given time, and B, so that they can control where you actually enter the area. So these people, on the other side of the Capitol, you have streets. Streets are a lot easier to police than open area. On the other side, where everybody was with open area. If when they leave, they don't leave through the front, they leave through the back. That's where Pence left when he was evacuated, and Pence was evacuated as soon as this shit went off.
I mean, yes, but that's one
Part of this
person compared to a
to
huge
go
group.
around, you have to go through the street that the Capitol Police have already barricaded off, using construction vehicles, active police cars. The police presence was not small. There is a way to extradite, and the combined American history of having to leave critical areas with critical personnel is gigantic, and especially so to give you context, I know people who are State Department. One of the things that happened today when this shit kicked off, immediately what's called a SAFE Act gets initiated. That's where all feds get put on immediate call to action. So they're on the ready. It's not just the police out there. It's not just the Capitol Police out there. You have interagency dependency. They're all working together. There's a system that exists to protect these people. They were never going to be attacked. That was never going to be allowed to happen. And if you think for a second, if these people were allowed to get in, that they would be able to touch people like McConnell, that's not something that was going to be possible. They would have gotten evacuated in that case. So they should have just evacuated in the first place, is where I come from. They didn't because of the ideological meaning of giving over the Capitol. If we give over the Capitol, then you have a Occupy Wall Street situation. They're not leaving the Capitol if you give it up. You now have a political chess piece. And the issue with that is, the left will say it's Trump's people and now they own the Capitol. But the right will say we have no control over these people. And the truth is, that's probably true. Now, does Trump have specific sway with the majority of them? Sure. But at a certain point, it grows beyond Trump. And what I saw was Trump is an aspect, but he's far from the only aspect of what these people were really fighting about. And I don't
would you argue
like I'm
it's
defending these people either? But you have to understand someone to appropriately deal with them, right?
So would you argue you said earlier that the left would argue that this is Trump's people. Would you argue that it's not Trump's people when he told them to go outside of the Capitol and protest?
I think the majority of those people would have voted for Trump, if not 95% of them. Does that mean that if Trump told them, look, you need to leave the Capitol, let's say they got in, right?
But he didn't tell them to leave the Capitol. He gave out a tweet. That said he supported the police that were protecting Congress.
No, he said it twice. He said it twice on the video that Twitter removed to leave the Capitol.
They removed the video?
Yes.
Can I get
besides that,
it's gone.
Oh, it's gone.
But
okay, so
besides that, let's say for a thought experiment that they broke in and the politicians were evacuated. Okay. So let's take that further. Let's say that 3 days in, it's an Occupy Wall Street situation. They're making demands. We want an investigation on, let's say it's election fraud. Let's say it's opening the country back up. Whatever it is, right? I'm not convinced that if Trump said, leave the building, stop doing this, let's use the democratic process, that they would listen. Because the truth is, it's not really about Trump. In the same way you'll often hear leftists talk, it's not about Bernie, it's about his policies, it's about what he means, it's about what he inspired people to do. A lot of people view Trump in a similar way. I think at the end of the day, Trump himself doesn't quite understand the movement he's created. And I'm not sure that he would have been able to sway that movement if it progressed to that point. So, I mean, this is the calculations that someone, Pelosi and McConnell, have to make when they're in a situation like this. Do we leave? And do we see the building and deal with the aftermath and the kind of concessions we're going to be forced to make? Or do we stay? And unfortunately, their decision led to a 17-year-old girl getting shot, or however old she was.
Okay, so there just so everyone's clear, you can find the video. He does tell them to leave. You can find it on C-SPAN. You just look up Trump telling Capitol protesters to leave. and he does tell them to leave. He's like, I understand your pain, but he kind of reinforces this kind of behavior from them by reinforcing it's a fraudulent election, right? His dangerous ideology that this is a dangerous election and that we should take action against it is the whole reason this mess started.
Right, and I imagine that. I don't think that's entirely unfair. I mean, the man believes what he believes. He seems to genuinely believe he was robbed.
Yeah,
I myself, there's a lot of questions.
And he's sympathizing with the people.
Right, and nevertheless, I mean, he's telling them to leave. I don't know what more you can do at a certain point. I mean, you can't expect him to not believe what he believes, but he's making the decision to do it. The fact that they removed it is very interesting to me.
Mm-hmm.
They removed 2 of them, calling for them to leave, and then they suspended him from Twitter.
Yep.
So
yeah, he's suspended for 12 hours.
Mm-hmm. I think they blocked it because in that he tried to sneak in it's a fraudulent election. Though that is not a good reason, seeing as he was telling people to leave. But I don't think in the middle of that people are checking their phones for Trump's Twitter. You know.
Right.
But the argument
on that door now. Let me go.
But the argument that you were making was he wasn't telling people anything, not to leave or nothing, but he was.
You're right.
In fact,
that's my fault. That's my place of ignorance. But I think that it would have been better. And this is it's done. There's nothing that can be done about it. But if he didn't push this rhetoric that the election was stolen and that you have to. I'm not directly quoting him, but like grab Congress and tell them it's a fraudulent election and make sure they do the right thing, with this tone of like I won't say inciting violence because he's not telling them to directly go and, kill Congress, right? But he's telling them, go out there, go do it, right? That's your first fuck up. Like, you can't do that.
Well,
you can't
he's also
can't rile people like this and then expect them not to overreact in this kind of way.
So something I've been talking about a lot recently, just having not so much like ranting about, but just talking to people about is, the kind of nature of the back and forth. I think a lot of the issues that we tend to have are just like one group does one thing, the other group responds, then the other group responds, and it all just gets lost in the sauce. It's all reactive. And people like to say Trump is reactive, but he's far from the problem here. He is reactive. So is the other side. So what we have here is almost 2 worlds of reality. In the Republican world, the election is invalid because it was stolen. In the leftist world, the election was 100% okay. And I'm not saying this is across the board on either side, but just in general, vague terms, on the leftist world, the election was 100% okay, but Trump is planning a coup. So both sides genuinely believe this. Both sides have no doubt that they're right about this. The reactions as a result of that are inevitable because we're constantly feeding into the system and this loop. So I'm reluctant to even like fight on these terms because you can go all the way back to, well, Trump shouldn't have said fraud in mention with leave the Capitol building, and then a right-leaning individual will say, well, if the big tech and the leftists didn't censor everything to do with election fraud, it wouldn't happen. And then the left will come back with, well, if the right wasn't spreading so much disinformation, it wouldn't be needed to be censored. And then you can go all the way back down this path, all the way back to the beginning of Jesus Christ. Of you did this, so I did this, so you did this, so I did this. At the end of the day, you need to walk away and say, all right, what are we actually doing?
But see, that's the problem, is that they're not walking away. Like, and this isn't just Trump. I don't want to focus on just Trump for kind of inciting this mentality. But you also have people like the GOP. Like, I don't remember if any of you seen that tweet, but this guy tweets out and he says, I'm ready to die to prove this election is fraudulent and keep Trump in office. And they reply to this tweet and post it and say he's ready to use his life. Are you? Like asking the general public that. So this is fucking dangerous shit to be telling people. This is very dangerous.
But that again is reaction. So
yes, but these are people that hold a responsibility. These are people that hold a
Well, I
responsibility.
mean, so here's this thing to think about that.
Choice. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
No problem. So, yeah, maybe a bigger question is why are people so desperate that they are willing to listen to these dangerous ideas?
Because
why are people so desperate that they are willing to do something that would normally be really stupid, but
I think it's
they're
because
willing
they're
to do
looking
this
for a victim complex. That's
I
think
or
they have a victim complex.
you might think it might be a victim complex, but I mean, I come from an area that has been wrecked since the 80s.
Mhm.
It's not just a victim complex.
here.
These are very real victims, and it's like you
Victims
can
of
see
a
it with all the
fraudulent
protests.
election?
Well, this is where I think everyone's kind of missing the point. It's no longer just about a supposed fraudulent election, where like it is, as Alibi said, a movement that is grown way larger than anyone can control. This is essentially some, I guess, the beginnings of a truly, I guess, how should I say it, a radical populist movement.
I mean, but I think it is about I think it is all about a fraudulent election because that's why people are turning on like McConnell, for instance. They weren't turning on McConnell and Fox News until they told Trump to concede, and then he refused to, and then they called them both sellouts, and then Trump was like,
but there was also they also started turning on him on the $2,000 thing.
Yeah, I think that's where it started with the check.
No. It started with McConnell admitting that Joe Biden was president-elect, right? And then they called him a sellout because he said it on Fox News.
But it didn't.
Yes.
But it didn't. That doesn't mean that it didn't evolve.
And
like the thing is, the truth of the thing is like McConnell has not had control of the voters, the base of the Republican Party.
Trump does. That's
since
the issue.
2016. Trump has he had
because he's petty and he doesn't like it when people are against him. Whenever he sees someone against him, he'll like pivot his entire base against them, right?
Yes,
so that's true. Thing that's interesting to me because I don't think he's pivoting the base so much as the base is matched step for step. People think, oh, you know, he's manipulating the base. The base isn't really there. There is some. But
it's
how about this?
In my
how about
opinion,
this?
it's practically a cult.
So
no,
it's not like
it's
that,
more of
this. When Trump did what he did to spite McConnell, with the Georgia elections, with the stimulus, most people. I mean, you have an insane amount of people who genuinely need this fucking money, and that's the whole deal. But you also have people who can live without it, and who will say, you know what? I want you to spite him. I'll take 600 over 2,000 if that motherfucker gets the point. You have genuine people who really do believe in similar ideals as Trump, and the idea that Trump is this giant con artist, which on some level he is. I think all politicians are, but the idea that you can manipulate people to this extent, I don't think it's true. People are generally more or less going to do what they're already going to do in a way that works towards their own personal situation.
That's the point of being radicalized.
But the point is, like the despair was there. Trump did not create that despair.
Trump didn't create despair.
He simply, at the end of the day, it was a mass of anger and depression and sadness that all it really had to do. It was locked up, and all it had to do was have a little bit of a release valve given to it, and that's what happened.
He didn't.
All he did was twist that release valve just an inch.
I think giving it that metaphor, that analogy is a little disingenuous. I want to say that he exploited it. He manipulated these people into performing certain actions by not directly doing it, right? Because this is something politicians are known for doing by taking
Of
one
course, he
thing.
benefited himself from it.
Hold on now.
He,
on the same flip of a coin of what you just said about Trump exploiting people could be said the same thing about the certain people in Antifa and Black Lives Matter that will grab groups of those people and use them for their own benefit and own gain and destruction of property and attacking people. Can the same not be said?
Well, I'm confused by what you mean. Can you like rephrase that?
Like you were talking about earlier, that Black Lives Matter and Antifa are not violent organizations and they don't want to do all that destruction of property. But can the same not be said for certain individuals to grab a group of people who align with their values and use them for their own benefit of destruction of property, attacking civilians, doing what they want them to do? Can the same not be said?
The difference is, right, that Antifa is not an inherently violent organization.
Trump is not inherently a violent person. So what's the difference?
No. What I'm saying is that Antifa is not an inherently violent organization, right? But right, you have Trump supporters who have become radicalized, and we have examples of Trump supporters doing this from his radicalization and dog whistling, like El Paso, where he'll say a certain thing, right? And he knows his fan base. He knows his fan base will kind of read in between the lines on their perspective, right? Like, for instance,
I have a question.
Has occurred for all those other organizations.
Hold on,
exactly.
I have a question for Mister. Hold up, Mister. I have a question for you. You say that there is dog whistling going on, and that the Trump supporters, or specifically the radicalized Trump supporters, are seeing to this dog whistling and acting according to whatever they see.
Yes.
And I would like to ask: is there demonstrable evidence for this?
You have the extreme prejudice against Middle Eastern countries during his bans.
Well, can we prove?
Well,
can I rephrase the question? Can you prove that Trump is dog whistling and people are actually reading through the lines, and that this is of his own accord?
I'd argue with I don't have the thing with the statistic on me, but if I'm not wrong, the right-wing extremist groups have been responsible for 75% of terror attacks, and I don't think that's coincidental when we have the most reactionary Republican in U.S. history.
Is it possible that it's coincidental?
I don't think so. I don't think so in the slightest.
If I'm not mistaken, most terrorist attacks were not linked to right-wing groups, statistically speaking.
That can get a little muddy, but I do consider white nationalism a right-wing group.
But that specific group basically really doesn't even exist anymore at this fucking point.
My payment.
That's for helping me out.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Of course, Dad.
I would argue that white nationalist group does still exist in the American Nazi Party.
I save up my money.
There was a
$600.
How many people are actually in the American Nazi Party?
Yeah, I'd love to know that number.
If you're willing to pay me back,
So Alibi,
and I would let you borrow some.
Alibi, why do you think
Mac,
these
you're not
people were
muted.
here?
I wouldn't pay him back.
Oh, what's the question?
Why do you think
You're
these
talking to
people were
me?
here at DC?
Oh, I'm sorry.
Why would you think I wouldn't be able to pay you back?
Mac, you're
Oh,
not
it's something
muted.
you wouldn't be able to. It's just
Mac. Your mic.
Why would
might
you
not
think that
though.
I wouldn't pay you back?
I got him.
Yeah, you can server mute him.
Okay, so Alibi, why do you think these people were here? Why were they here today?
A lot of reasons. You see a lot of people talking about election fraud. I don't necessarily think election fraud is an issue. It's something I think I think at this point everyone could say there is election fraud. Is it widespread? Did it alter the election? That's the question, right? And I don't really think that was the big driver here. The protest here. Keep in mind the past 2 weeks. What's been the conversation? Yeah, part of it has been election fraud, but in my mind, most of it has been about the stimulus. It's been this. You've been seeing this for a while now, but over the last few weeks, you've really been seeing it ratchet up, which is this almost. Sorry, the fucking pepper spray. Give me a cough. You you see this rationing up of kind of awareness of how little the government is really doing for us. You see the right really starting to see we're spending trillions on other countries while we can't even get $600, and that's both a concession to the left while also simultaneously being something more than that. So I think there's a lot here, and it's not something is boiled down as, oh, they're here to support Trump. Oh, they're here to protest election fraud. Oh, they're here because of dog whistles. No, they're here because they want to be here. They're here because they're tired. They're here because they're angry. They're here because they're done. You don't do what they did today if you're not at the end of your wits. You just don't. Nobody there for role play purposes. No one's LARPing. Not a single person there was LARPing. People were getting flashbanged. I was standing there when they opened the door, or when they were holding the doors open. I got a face full of pepper spray. I'm watching. These people were getting gassed in the fucking face. They're getting flashbanged, and they're holding those doors open with all their might. This is willpower. This is not role-playing. This is not LARPing. This is things you don't do if you don't, with every part of your soul, have a genuine goal. And leadership cultism doesn't work like that. There's a point cults fall apart, and that's they will cannibalize their leader.
Do you think that? I mean, okay, so can you go over the last few sentences you said? Because there was a point I wanted to make for that, and I completely blanked.
Starting where?
You were saying that this isn't like a cultism regarding the Republican Party, specifically Trump's ideology.
Yeah, I don't buy that for a few reasons. The first is, it's not what they were. And like I was saying earlier, when you're in a situation like this, if you haven't been in that before, you're not really considering your words, so to speak. What you chant and what you yell is going to be representative of what is most important to you. And just from and again, it's anecdotal, because I was only there at a specific time frame around the groups that I was around, right? And you had 20, 30 million people, or 1,000 people. So, I'm sure that there are factions of this that I missed, but the majority of what I heard had very little to do with election interference, and it had a lot more to do with really populistic shit, with rights, with representation. When you have people screaming at the police saying, "You're call us criminals, but you're protecting the criminals in there," I don't buy that. That's really election fraud.
So, are you familiar with how the Nazi Party started?
I am, and the brown shirts and the way the idea of fascism.
No. Okay, so
I get the connection.
So no, there's one specific thing I want to target about this. So the Nazi Party originally ran over the Socialist Party, right? This is a very common fact. The way they did this is they were like, hey, we're socialist. We're actually, we're for the people. We're socialist, right? We're the same as these guys. So that is the same mentality. So these are already disparaged people, but they don't understand necessarily why they're being disparaged against. And that there can come from a lot of ignorance, even from your own backgrounds, right? So like the Germans and much of Eastern and even Western Europe wanted to argue they're being disparaged against because of the Jews or because of the blacks or because of the gays, right? These same people want to say they're disparaged against because of a fraudulent election, because of Democrats in the House, because of Democrats in the Senate. Like,
okay, but part of that disparagement didn't start just because of.
I find that
I'm not denying the disparagement. I'm saying that they're not completely following alignment.
Okay, same can be said about Antifa and being disparaged against fucking Trump supporters.
Hold on.
Can I ask something again?
For a moment. Here's what's fascinating about that. That what you just described is the exact way that most members of the right view the left. So here's the question I'll pose to you. When the right talks about, the left is
You cut out again, Alibi. Hello?
Can I ask a question in his absence?
Go, Mac.
Yeah.
So you made a correlation between the Nazi Party, the origins of the Nazi Party, and what's happening right now with the Republicans. And I would like to ask, aren't you aware that correlation, it doesn't equal causation? And just because these two things are correlated doesn't mean that one is equivalent to the other, or that you can judge one based on the other?
If I showed you Alibi? Wait, say something, Alibi? I'll get to your question.
Yeah, I'm here. I had to exit it real quick. How much of that did you guys hear?
We heard, you heard, you can restart over from the beginning because Mac just answered a question because you left temporarily. But so if I showed you a goose, showed you a duck, would you say they're correlated?
If you showed me
and
a what?
why would you say if I showed you this is for Mac? If I showed you a goose and I showed you a duck, would you say they're correlated? And why would you say they're correlated?
So if you showed me a goose and you showed me a duck, well, first off, I don't think
Mac's
that
still
I don't think the example or the I don't think they're the same or that they're comparable. We're talking about political parties here, and both of them are complex.
What I'm saying is that if one uses tactics, right, to say to blame one section of the group and say they're ruining your life, so you need to take action against that group, right? And that's what the Nazi Party did. They said the Jews are ruining your life. And they actually, when the Nazi Party started, they said the socialists are ruining your life, and they said the communists are ruining your life. There's a famous poem that said, by I believe
I think I get the point. I think I get the point. However, may I ask something? Another thing.
Okay.
When we look at something like the authoritarian left and the authoritarian right, you can see very many similarities. Both of them use violence, and both of them are very prone to extreme forms of violence. But does that mean that they're the same thing, or that you can compare one to the other in the same way, where as you would compare say that Nazism is the same as Leninism and so forth, or that? I just don't think you can. I don't think that those two things are comparable. And just because a side may share a similarity doesn't mean that they can't be extremely different.
And the other thing about it is, it's like I was saying. I don't know how much of you guys heard, but the way that you're talking about what's happening on the left in terms of the level of extremity, that is not dissimilar from the way that the right talks about the left. All you have to do is switch the word socialist with fascist, and you have the literal exact same statement.
Okay,
so,
but then
is that this is a false framing, and it's not that you're going out of your way to make a false framing. It's that it's the way we're taught to look at politics. And I don't think that what we're seeing with the right and the left in terms of their extremity is really about furthering their own ideology. What I think it is you have extreme misery across the population, and they're choosing to put this into partisan terms because that is the only political system that we have. We have a partisan system. So when it comes to getting solutions to your problems, you use the system at hand. The system at hand is partisan. So the people who are going to try to raise awareness are partisan, and therefore their strategies for this are partisan, and therefore their strategies in general are partisan. So what you have to do is break that first, because I don't think that the left leads to Marxism just the same way I don't think the right leads to fascism, in so much as it doesn't have to. What it can lead to is something more than that. But there is a danger to if we continue to just rebound off each other the way that we're currently doing. But on top of that,
you say no. Hold on. I want to break down what you said real quick. So you said the right doesn't lead to fascism, right?
Not inherently.
Okay, so can you explain to me why white nationalists and Nazis are so easily able to infiltrate right-wing circles compared to left-wing circles?
Sure, they like strict borders for different reasons, but they like strict borders. They are what white nationalists will typically do is they'll take statistics.
Do you think it's because the Republicans hold white nationalist ideas in mind and they just paint
That's
it
not
as
what I'm saying. So I would say that strict borders are necessary because they're not effectual and they're actually more damaging. And I can get into the policy so that you can understand exactly what I'm saying, which is, and I'll try to make it as simple as possible. The amount of people we take in is a drop in the bucket as far as the amount of people going into these countries we're taking them from. Furthermore, so these situations are getting better in those countries by letting the people come here. Secondly, the people that we take, the most likely candidate for someone to illegally or legally come to our country is someone A, most dissatisfied with the current system in this country, B, with the most means or possibilities of actually making it over here, and C, the person with the most, frankly, vision. Because if you come here, you're not living in a good place. So you want a good life for your children. So what we're doing is a brain drain. The people most likely to be dissatisfied with the state of their own home are the people most likely to enact change. And the numbers, just the base numbers of immigrants that we take, so there's a legitimate right-leaning argument towards stricter borders, right? Where the differentiation, I fucked up that word that badly, but where it differs from, say, white ethno-nationalists or fascists to a more regular right-leaning person is in the extremity of it. So they take it to the next level. Well, strict borders are great because you get black people out or you get Mexicans out, and we don't like them. So that's an entirely different argument. It just so happens that the end result of the policy is stricter borders. That's the connection.
So are you familiar with the term dog whistling?
Again, this is where that fundamental disagreement of how manipulated are people really. I don't think people really can be moved that far off their own needle.
No. Because look at it like this, right? No reasonable person is going to say fuck the Jews, right? They're gonna do it in this Nick Cannon style where they try to explain it
I don't
through.
think it's unreasonable to say fuck a group of people if they're doing shit you don't like. I think where it becomes hate is just where like they're vermin, kill them all. That's hate. I don't like what the Jews are doing for X, Y, and Z reason. Is not hate. That's objective opinion.
Can you demonstrate that somebody is dog whistling though?
So one really good example, if you're looking for a really recent example, I'd have to think a little bit deeper on that. But one that comes off the top of my head is Reagan during his crack laws, right? To where he was saying crack is a horrible, violent drug, and it leads to death and poverty and all this other things, and it's unchristian, blah blah blah, right? So, but what he forgets to mention, and what's kind of obvious, is that because of the CIA's distribution of crack through black neighborhoods, and the CIA admitted to this, Reagan knows that a disproportionate amount of black people do crack, right? So that's how you kind of fit crack cocaine into this little bubble. The only difference between crack and crack cocaine is baking soda. That's it. So and something you can look at today, is that 100 grams of coke will get you 5 years. Do you want to know how much crack gets you for 5 years? How much crack you have to have for 5 years?
Yeah, I'm familiar with the statistics on that. And
Right. So
the thing.
so that's a form of dog whistling. You're not saying, "Oh, they're inherently violent." They're just using something that makes them inherently violent. Another good form of racism through dog whistling is the culture
Yes,
argument,
but okay.
right?
So
I'm not
you
saying it's the
do you
people.
think
I'm
that?
saying it's the culture.
So you're saying that right? Oh wait. Okay, say that again. You said the culture.
Yeah, so culture is a big way that fascist groups, specifically racially motivated fascist groups like white nationalists, use that as a way to justify racism is through culture. They argue that culture is the real reason that black people are struggling currently, and not systemic racism.
Can't the same be said vice versa for all the other groups?
That's exactly what I'm hitting at. That a right-wing
Yeah.
person would say that putting.
Well, see, that is the argument, right? Because they say the reason that white people aren't being disparaged against the same is because of their culture. Their culture is inherently better, and they make the same argument for Asians, Cubans, and whatnot.
Okay, it's just because I'm an Asian myself, I'm just going to take this one a bit. Because personally, you're saying like, okay, so the right wing is rather white supremacist and stuff. But if you look at Asian and Latino families, you'll find that their cultural values are much more in line with right wing ideology.
And this is something that's
in fact.
Sorry, I'm not trying
to. I'm failing to see your point with that. What does that have to do? Because they're culturally right wing. They're just they have a better culture.
No, as in their same values that like a lot of what you would consider right wing cultural values are the same as, let's just say, Asian or Latino values.
Latinos believe in white nationalism.
Well, you're pinning right wing ideology singly and solely to white nationalism. So what you're trying to paint is anybody who has right wing ideology is a white supremacist.
No, I'm not saying that anybody that has right wing ideology is a white supremacist. I'm saying that all white supremacists have right wing ideologies.
I don't
Negative.
believe that. I just think it's a different type of racism. So I have legitimately spoken to left-leaning individuals who will literally tell you to your face, white people are subhuman. We are genetic.
Okay, I've spoken to left-wing individuals that say white people aren't subhuman.
Right. So why does that logic not apply?
We can do this. We can do this back and forth.
But what we're saying is you're giving a one ultimatum. He's saying that there's two sides to the same coin, and you're saying no, there's only one side.
I'm saying okay. So my generalization of all white nationalists have Republican values is because Republican values directly correlate and support white nationalism. That's why you have Republican senators, governors, and whatnot defending Charlottesville. Meanwhile, you don't have Democratic.
Have you, Governor Northam?
That's a good example.
Who?
Virginia Governor Northam. With the guy who couldn't remember if he was in blackface or in the KKK suit.
Mm-hmm.
So
either way, not exactly a good look.
So yeah, no, that's not a good look either way. But this is what I'd like to point to: moderate Democrats are really just Republicans, because if you turn back what moderate Democrat
that's
means,
where we begin.
It's just
you're starting to the definitions are starting to get muddied there, right? At that point, so we can't exactly just say, oh, right wing stuff automatically leads to fascism and stuff, just like saying, oh, left wing stuff automatically leads to Stalin.
Except it does, because we're watching it happen under. So you wouldn't say that Trump's reactionary. You wouldn't say that Trump's reactionary proto-fascist for those who don't know, and there are people watching the stream, right? So proto-fascist means that just you're not inherently fascist. I'm not saying Trump is a fascist, but the things that he says kind of support a fascist ideology.
So I'll say this. It's not a question of fascism or Stalinism. No, it's just in general authoritarianism. That's kind of a big difference, because They're
Okay,
very different.
so are you
ends on
saying
that.
the right wing is rather authoritarian than they are fascist?
Well, it depends on how it depends
Can I
on
ask you a
how like what government really is it? Because if you're talking about super white wing, like super right wing, like economically, not really. Like that's just kind of almost it depending on who you ask, that can go from laissez-faire to feudalism. But if you're talking about like say just in general public, sure, there's right wing like just say culture or like may at least historically seem to be tending toward more slightly more authoritarian tendencies. But that isn't a guaranteed thing. Like if you look at
Okay.
Singapore, that's
Let me ask you, Mister. You say you said a very certain thing. Not all Republicans are racist, white nationalists.
No.
Nationalists, hold on. But all white nationalists are Republican or right-leaning, right?
That was a generalization,
If
but
I
the
said-
majority of white nationalists are indeed Republican.
Sure. So would it be fair for me to say that the majority of black nationalists are Democratic?
Probably.
Okay, so why is one worse than the other? What are we talking
I'm
about?
not saying one is worse than the other, but black nationalists don't make up a large percentage of Republican voters.
okay. So this is going to be like, how can you really say that? Because I mean, if we can just look at the statistics here. KKK membership peaked in the late 1800s and had a slight resurgence after
Because
Wilson.
no reasonable person is going to say, I'm part of the KKK, now vote for me.
Are you?
But
would you consider the Proud Boys?
but action is what is
Yeah,
how
action.
we can actually compare
So
these.
would you
Alibi had a
not?
question.
Would you consider the Proud Boys a white nationalist group?
I would consider them a terrorist group and a white nationalist group, pretty much. Yeah.
How
They
white
serve to
nationalists?
protect. They serve to protect white America.
Are you
How
aware
are they?
So wait, let Alibi talk. Let Alibi talk.
Yeah.
Are you aware that they actually have a very heavy African American and Spanish influence? In fact, their leader Enrico Tarrio is half black.
You do know who Candace Owens is, right? She sounds like
Yes,
her
she's African American. So again,
ghostwriter. So what I'm arguing is that like white nationalists don't care what race you are, is just as long as you support their ideology.
Okay, but then so this is really weird then, because by its own definition, by its name, you would think that it's talking about
no white nationalism is an ideology that so JonTron, for example, is a white nationalist, and he's for an white ethno state.
I feel like we're
he's
talking
Aryan,
about completely
he's
different
not Aryan,
ideas. I think we're talking about completely different ideas, because when you say white nationalism, it sounds more like you're just talking about conservative ideology in general. At this point.
They for the most part go hand in hand.
Okay, but see, that seems very disingenuous to me, because let's just look at Japan. They are probably more conservative than us. Actually, almost 100% more conservative than us. Like, a woman gets pregnant, out of the workforce. Gay people, you'll be shunned. Sure, they might seem like they are rather something, but nah. Civil rights, they will hold you for 28 days without lawyers. Stuff like that.
You know that Mike Pence
Would you say that's white nationalist
conversion therapy, right?
Hold on, let's just stop for a second.
I do, but that's also his personal preference, and he hasn't instituted any policy in terms of actually supporting.
Because nobody would vote for that policy.
Hold on, Worm's got something to say.
I was just saying, this is becoming more of a debate than a discussion, so we should probably change the topic.
I'll agree with that.
This wasn't originally about like white supremacists. This is about what happened in DC. So how about we talk
I'm saying that ideology kind of leads into
let's try and talk about how is this going to affect the future? Like, what is the future of the GOP now? What's the future of Biden's presidency after this?
I think it's going to strengthen Biden's presidency.
In the short term.
I think he's gonna shoot himself in the back of the head 2 times, and then Kamala Harris.
Yeah.
Take that.
Well, I mean, we all remember the video of Kamala's husband saying, "I'm married to the next president of the United States." I mean,
Did he
and that
really?
was that was months ago. Like
yeah, but then
months ago.
you also had that one military official that was like, there will be a smooth transition into a second Trump administration.
Okay,
No,
but
Pompeo was talking shit, man.
Pompeo's
Yeah.
also part of the cabinet. I mean, he's Trump administration.
Yeah, but what the point I'm making is it's just bullshit they're saying just because.
one's married to a VP or going to be a VP, and then the other one's working for a certain person.
Let me
You're working
correct
for
you
a
there.
certain person.
He's about to he's about to be out of a job too.
Yeah.
So you know it's.
Yeah, exactly. So of course he's going to talk shit. Now, but when you're married to somebody who's about to be a VP, you might get fucking pretty prideful about it.
I mean, yeah, I'd be prideful if I was married to a VP as well. I'd be like,
so
fuck
why
yeah,
would you
bro.
be announcing that you're going to be married to the next president?
I mean, I'd imagine that's just that could get well.
Okay, let's get back on topic, people.
Listen,
let's just get back on topic.
I'm all for convicting Kamala, just not of thought crime of murder.
I didn't see Kamala there today between you and me.
But Mr. I'll agree that it's going to strengthen him for a bit. But I think it will only be in the short term because
of course.
The reality of it is that the economic situation is the worst it's been since the Great Depression, if not worse than the Great Depression. And if there's one thing that the American people don't really care about, it's the economy. And whether or not it's really no one's fault the economy's this way. We just got hit by a virus. But you always blame number one, right? So this is going to be blamed on him no matter how whether or not it's really his fault or not. So,
and I think even as far as economy, even on the left, you see recognition in some ways towards Trump. Not as much as maybe I think he deserves, but the things that Biden wants to do didn't work when they were done. I'm not convinced they'll work now, especially with the ramped up, urgency of where we are. But I mean, economy is economy. If it goes up, it'll go up. If it goes down, it'll go down. Where I see this playing more of a role is this is a shift in how people deal with their representatives. I can't remember a time in my entire life where this is in the mode of communication, true violence. You have isolated incidents, but nothing like this.
Well, that and also the fact in hand that our country, low information voters and shit, and people are starting to pay attention. People are starting to, like you said, be proactive, and they're starting to research people. So when they start researching Biden, whenever he actually takes the seat, they're going to find out, all right, he's tried to be president 3 other fucking times and, lost all 3. And then in 2, he got, I think it was 1 or 2, definitely 1, that he got found out doing fraudulent shit. So people are going to start digging at him. And he's going to get thrown to the fucking wolves.
Who got caught doing fraudulent shit?
Biden.
I mean, he plagiarized.
He plagiarized, but there was something else in another one, but he plagiarized fucking 1.
But what did he plagiarize?
I mean, a speech. Some other things.
A British politician speech.
Yes.
I think if you ask most leftists what they think of Biden, they'll say, I fucking hate him, but he's the better of 2 evils.
That's my argument though. I don't like Biden. I fucking hate him. I think that Bernie or Warren or AOC would have been like a drastically better fucking option than Biden. But yeah, but I don't want Biden.
Joe Jorgensen.
Yeah, I mean, in reality, as much as people think, okay, Trump is bad, Biden's better. And they may even hold to that belief, but I think most of the left is going to spend the next 4 years
regretting. Oh yeah, well, like we look at the fact that Biden's been around politically for what, 40 years?
45.
Yeah, 45 years, and it hasn't done a fucking thing for nobody. And Trump's only been around for the last 4, and he's done more than most politicians in their entire fucking careers.
I wouldn't argue that. I think that. So this is what I'll give Trump credit for. I'll give Trump credit for his not sticking his dick in between North Korea and South Korea during their peace deal. I'll congratulate him on not getting a big head over the peace deal in North Korea, between the U.S. But that does not excuse him ripping up the same deal he made of North Korea with Iran and then get all fucking surprised when they start building nukes all of a sudden. And then deciding to talk to Pence and be like, hey, Pence, I know he ripped up that peace deal that said they wouldn't make nukes, but they're making nukes, so I kind of want to bomb their fucking nuclear facility. And then Pence is like, whoa, 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 I'm all for bombing Middle Easterns with you. But, let's calm down because you're about to leave the presidency.
Okay, so in truth, the reality is Americans don't give a fuck about foreign policy.
No, not even this.
Not really. Exactly. So this doesn't matter at the slightest, because the reality is, if we look at Trump's foreign policy, he's probably only honestly been more successful than Bush and Clinton on it, at least. But no one gives a shit about that because who gives a fuck?
He's gotten people interested in foreign policy. What do you think this whole travel ban on most Middle Eastern countries is about? It's foreign policy, and he got people fucking excited.
But he's gotten four countries over there in the Middle East to sign in the UAE. So I don't see where you're correlating that he's fucking that up. He's actually making it better, and Iran was the only fucking country that said no, we don't want to be aligned with Israel. Fuck them. He didn't rip up no deal. They did.
Because the government. First of all, Iran ripped up their peace deal.
Let's keep it on topic. I feel like the peace deal is a whole separate issue. But the point is, right? No one really gives a fuck about foreign policy when it comes down to it.
So back to Biden's fucking shit, being boosted. I think the reason it's going to be boosted, right, is the same reason that Trump supporters got really cocky about him winning the 2020 election, right? Because they were in everybody's face about it, and they were like, haha, we won. And then election results came in, and they were like, oh shit, we're on the back foot now. The same reason is for this right here, because they were like, look, we're not fucking burning and looting shit, and we're not destroying Capitol property. And then they went around and destroyed Capitol property. So now they kind of have to deal with that slap in the face because a bunch of guys.
Oh yeah, they'll deal with the slap in the face. But the point of so Biden will receive that small boost right now. That's the smugness from his voters, his supporters, and the neoliberal and in fact probably the neoconservative establishment now. But when the policy actually affects people, you're gonna have to. It's going to hurt, especially when, say, he wants to go back into the TPP. Mm-hmm. That is going to kill him, so his whatever boost he gets now is going to be absolutely drowned by whatever neoliberal, neoconservative policy he's pushing for next.
What you saw with Trump is that he's actually losing a lot of approval rating because of his push on a fraudulent election, right? So,
sure, yeah. Because I agree with that, but the point is, you're still saying at the long run, how is this going to affect it? It's honestly, I don't think it's going to affect it that much.
I think it's going to affect a lot because this is what happens with politicians when they don't shut the fuck up after they lose an election.
I don't think it's wise to assume something you can't demonstrate.
Yeah.
No, because look at Hillary. Look at Hillary after she lost the election. She immediately conceded, and he didn't hear anything from Hillary after that.
She kept talking about Russiagate for a while.
I was about to say, yeah.
Russiagate, but nobody fucking paid attention to that. Nobody took it seriously.
A lot of us paid attention.
The people that took it seriously on the left were the same people wearing pussy hats and then running around. So,
and they're the ones that won the election, though. So, they have some serious power.
All right, fair enough. But okay, so what I'm saying is that who lost against Obama? I forget his name. Fucking Mitt Romney. Romney, first of all, he's a very traditional politician where he says the things that sound there are a lot of
I'm
normative
gonna make
statements.
this country the best country ever. He does very
Right.
politician things.
He does very politician things, right? So after he lost the election, you didn't really hear from Mitt Romney at all, except for that one fucking thing where Biden kind of owns him, where he was like, Mitt Romney was like, "We don't need this relief," and then Mitt Romney was like, "We don't need this relief," and then Biden was like, "Wait, didn't you ask for that relief? I'm confused."
So I've been trying to ask you.
Well, now the thing has to be asked: does correlation equal causation?
Dexter, I've been
Which
trying to ask
the answer is no.
Yep. Nope.
So even if you could correlate this with Hillary and Romney, that doesn't mean that it's caused or that there's an inherent response, like that they're connected.
Yeah, and if we look at even with Hillary and Romney, like Obama's approval rate kept sinking after that. Trump's approval rate kept sinking after that. So it's not a guarantee just because a loser.
I think Obama's approval rates sunk because he kind of sucked. But
but
we can't demonstrate that, so it would be unwise to assume or assert anything without evidence.
Dexter.
What's up?
Legit trying to ask you a question for like 5 minutes.
Yeah. So this is after this question, I have to go because I have another group that I'm playing a game with.
No problem.
Well, here's the thing.
Sorry, boys. Your favorite lefty has to, Anyway, go.
You're talking about polls. The polls, they're not accurate. In no way, shape, or form in the past 4 years have the polls been accurate. More than that, it's actually been statistically proven that the right just doesn't answer polls. They don't bother. They don't answer it truthfully, and they don't answer it accurately.
So it's only Democrats that are answering polls?
Huh?
So it's only Democrats that are answering polls?
Well, at least answering truthfully.
The studies have been done about this. They started realizing in 2016 that the polls were not doing what they should be doing as far as giving them an accurate
I'm
idea.
talking about I think 2019, 2020 polls after during COVID.
2016 for a reason. 2016,
okay,
they began to realize that the polls were not working as they should be. They were not correctly representing what these races ended up being. So they said, okay, let's start delving into this. Let's figure out why. They tried just saying, straight up, do you answer political polls truthfully? People, again, they found the polls to actually be misrepresented. So they asked it a different way. They asked, do you feel comfortable stating your political views publicly? And they asked that, and they also specified what party do you assign yourself, and they made it anonymous so that people could answer comfortably. What they found was the only group that had below 20% of people saying, I feel comfortable, I don't feel comfortable, was far left. Every other group had over 70% saying, I do not feel comfortable in the current environment speaking on what I believe. I can say this from anecdotal evidence coming from a Spanish-like community. The Spanish is not fucking with the left right now. But there is an expectation.
I don't blame them. Biden is representing it.
Right. But it's beyond what I'm actually talking about, which is that polls are completely inaccurate at this point. I mean, look at the election. Even if Trump lost legitimately, which end of the day is going to get decided tomorrow when they finish convening on this shit, even if he lost legitimately, these polls were so far off that they in themselves are almost a form of misleading, like fraud. Like they were so far off that many people who would have said, I'm going to vote, said it's not worth it because Trump's not going to win. Trump smashed the expectations of what these polls were projecting. Polls don't work, especially not on the right. So when we're talking about approval rating and we're talking about, where did the American people actually lie, that's almost impossible to tell at this time, just because of the level of reaction that people have been dealing with for 4 years.
Oh yeah.
It's called a racist for anything.
So you don't think Republicans have an opportunity to vocally express themselves when they control the two most powerful positions?
Well,
to represent themselves when they're banned off
social media, yeah.
Create their own social media, forced to in a situation where they can lose property, lose jobs, lose opportunities due to Twitter from 5 years ago because of cancel culture, which exists exclusively beneficiary to the left.
No, that's not true. That's not true at all.
Well, no, that's very true. The right, more of the right has been targeted than anyone on the left. People have been doxxed.
Okay, so I guess there's a difference between like what Mister is saying as like the left and I guess what everyone else is saying the left because.
So when I speak of the left, I mean universal healthcare. I mean leftism, not liberalism, because liberalism is kind of more center left than it is inherently left.
If I have a certain data set point of belief, if I'm pro Medicare for all, if I'm feminist, if I'm pro racial equality, if I'm not even pro racial equality, if I'm pro racial equality of outcome, if I'm
wait, what's wrong with equality of outcome?
So the quality of outcome?
Yeah, what's wrong?
Well, let Alibi finish. Let Alibi finish first.
That's a debate for a different day. Because this is what I'm saying. If I'm pro all of those things, there is almost zero chance of me getting canceled, fired. Zero.
Okay, that's because those are reasonable standpoints. And people aren't going to get mad at that. If you said that you weren't for racial equality or racial equality of opportunity.
But here's the thing, you cannot say that because the ability for anyone to argue about it is not possible because if they disagree with you, they fall off the map. They receive consequences for disagreeing with the zeitgeist.
Well, you are familiar with what boycotting is, right?
Well, no, but there's a difference between boycotting and removing from the map.
Now, what Alibi is saying, hold on. What Alibi is saying is like you won't. Okay, I'm for racial equality overall. Okay, so Black Lives Matter. No, all lives matter. You're a fucking racist. There you go. Perfect example.
All Lives Matter is a protest to the Black Lives Matter protest because it assumes that all races are experiencing the same hardships as Black Lives Matter. Black Lives Matter is saying, hey, you might experience hardships too, but not at the rate or severity that we are. So we would like some attention to fix our shit, so we can focus on everybody as a whole.
Oh, okay. Well,
yeah.
I mean, as someone from an immigrant minority community, I'll just say that's not really a sentiment shared outside of, let's just say, I don't want to sound I guess like smug or come up-ish about it, but that's really not a sentiment shared in outside of, I guess, the upper middle class suburban communities.
But that's because the suburban communities is pretty whitewashed, if you ask me.
And this is whitewashed.
Yeah, wait, what?
I mean, for example, like where Latinx came from, it's that same kind of little culture where.
Did you just say Latinx, bro?
I'm saying it's inherently bad. I'm saying whitewashing movements is really bad. Like 16-year-old white girls posting a black screen on their Instagram and pretending like it's actually doing something.
Oh, that can be said to anybody that did that thing.
Yeah,
it's not whitewashing; it's slacktivism.
Yeah, slacktivism is a good word for it.
Through American suburban white culture.
It's not inherent to that. It's just people thinking that they're accomplishing something through means that aren't actually doing anything. It has nothing to do. It's not inherent to white culture. It's not inherent to any kind of culture. It's just something that people do.
So you're rewarded to if I know that if I put a black screen and I regularly support black people, I'm gonna get praise. If I know that I could potentially get views, if I know that I could potentially be safe from unnecessary punishment in terms of financial loss, if I know that being a progressive means that my movie is going to sell better, then I am going to do those things because that's the path of least resistance.
So are you fighting against people being mad and expressing their First Amendment?
Alternative that if I post that I am pro strict immigration, if I post that I do believe there's differences between genders, if I post that more than two genders is nonsense. If I post any of these typically more right-leaning views, if I know that that is going to lead to me losing followers, to me losing opportunities, and to me being virtually punished and outed, I'm not going to do it. So what that does is it further down.
It keeps people in line with being socially correct.
It puts me into
No.
into 4chan. It puts me into these kind of verses of echo chambers. And what that does is
Like where a
radicalize.
majority of us came from.
Create white nationalists and misogynists and homophobic because you've left them no place to speak. You've left them no one to speak to. You've left them no one to tell them they're wrong because you've completely cut them out of the equation.
So cancel culture both does and doesn't exist and isn't a problem. One big example of how it is a problem is Colin Kaepernick, who was canceled for speaking about a legitimate problem, and then people freaked the fuck out. Even if when people were saying that he was protesting against our military, Nate Boyer, a Green Beret, told him to kneel, as that he kneeled for his fallen
I mean,
brothers.
I think you're working with the assumption that that these people who are complaining about cancel culture, at least on this call, also say like the Colin Kaepernick situation is completely justified. Like I think that's a false dichotomy there.
We can disagree with both situations. Both of them can be considered cancel culture. And canceling someone for their mere convictions is, well, nothing new.
Just wrong in general.
It's not right.
What I'm saying is cancel culture exists in the sense of canceling people that have reasonable justifications for what they're saying, and cancel culture is a bad thing and exists in the sense of wanting to cancel what was the fucking guy that died like 100 fucking years ago that they tried to cancel? Mongolian. Help me out here.
Genghis Khan.
Fucking, that was not 100 years ago.
That's the only one I know of.
Okay.
Yeah, that's the only Mongol anyone knows.
Yeah, the only guy that we all have like a small percentage of DNA from.
I remember that happening. I remember there was one that they were trying to cancel.
Yeah, Genghis Khan was one of them. But cancel culture doesn't exist when Richard Spencer states that he's not a racist, he's a race realist.
So here's a big problem what I had with the way you put it in words, though, is what you said was not really cancel culture. I can't remember what you said in the beginning, part of the sentence, but you said keeps people in line to keep them socially correct. Do you not find that fundamentally and flawedly morally wrong?
No, because I feel like everybody should be on the same page of what's morally correct, and if you don't want to fall in that, then you don't really.
But okay, now
absolute.
Now hold on,
guys,
let me finish. Yeah, let me finish. So you don't find that morally flawed, but we're in America, the only country on the face of this planet that has a right to speech. And you're saying, hold on, I'm not done. And you're sitting there saying that if you do not align with my values and what I believe in, then you do not have a right to speak. Do you understand that that's brown shirting? That is Nazi talk. That is complete.
I'm saying if your views inherently hurt somebody else, you should not be able to.
You're forgetting that they're making an argument. Like you can't ban or. You can't ban an argument, and when you attempt to ban an argument, it only makes the argument stronger. You only makes it appear more reasonable.
Okay, well, now you're starting to sound like Nazi Germany. You are wanting to cancel people out for shit that they believe in something else that you don't. You were one of the people that want to get rid of free speech in this country at this point.
I don't want to. You were just like free speech doesn't exist.
Free speech does exist. It's a concept that people abide by and people try to enforce. I mean, if you're talking about like the privilege of speech in a state context, then I guess you could make that argument. But free speech as a concept exists.
If you think freedom of speech exists, I want you to go wear a Nazi arm badge and walk into work and see how well that works out for you.
That is not freedom of speech.
Okay, then I want you to go up to your boss and say,
I didn't say that freedom. Look, I didn't say that freedom of speech existed in this country, or that I could make the argument
It's
that
perfectly done.
That wasn't the argument.
Illegal. It's not socially accepted.
Can I finish? But that wasn't the argument that I was making. The argument that I was making is that free speech exists at a concept.
Yes, and that concept is not feasible because in freedom
Why?
of speech, you also have so a good example.
Does that not mean that the concept is not desirable?
No, the good example of this is freedom of speech cannot be enforced, right? Because you have people. No, freedom
How
of
can you
speech.
force freedom?
That's
a legitimate question. How do you force freedom?
Hold on. Let him finish first. Let him finish.
Yeah, let him finish.
So, all right, look, freedom of speech, right? It can't exist because you can't enforce freedom of speech. No, hold on. So you can enforce freedom of speech, right? And I'm grossly, kind of marginalizing freedom of speech. But what I'm saying is that you can't make people not angry and not want to protest certain people. I'm not saying you should be fucking arrested for saying that two genders doesn't exist, but don't be surprised when people want to deplatform you and don't want to listen to your racist, transphobic, or
here's the thing.
Okay, can I respond to this? Can I respond to this?
Yes.
Go
ahead.
Okay. So you're right. People have the right to say like protest other people's speech. That is their own right? However, there's a difference between protesting one's speech and then stripping them of their livelihood. There's a difference, and that's a big one, is like there's a difference between protesting one's speech and then trying to make sure that they can never talk or say whatever speech they want. Now, you can say, yes, Twitter and Reddit and Facebook and all the other social media companies, they're private entities. But the reality is the internet today, right, is like the town hall of way back. It's like the newspaper of way back. It's something that is no longer a want, but a necessity. So to be able to like call upon these entities and give them the power to say, okay, you can just get rid of this guy, then in many ways you essentially are basically shutting them in the door, right?
No. Okay, so what I'm arguing against is not the idea that you can essentially okay, so what I'm saying is that if you get fired because you're exposed as a Nazi, that shouldn't be surprising to you because you're supposed to be a representation
discrimination
of that.
laws, though.
How is it discrimination laws?
This is discrimination upon your belief.
Yeah.
And that is against the law.
Except your belief harms other people.
It doesn't matter.
Here's the thing. I can answer that one. It doesn't matter about what you fucking feel. If you're angry about this person for believing in that, you can't do a fucking thing about it. There's no law that says that they got to be stopped because it hurt your feelings. That is what we're getting at.
Or a big one is like religion.
Are you familiar with what C16 is? So it keeps right. It keeps you from actively discriminating against other people, right?
Yeah.
So you can't go up to a trans person and say you're a fucking I shouldn't be using this, but you're a fucking tranny, and doing that every single day and disparaging against that person, right? You should be fucking fired because.
So what about the people saying you're not?
There's already things in place for that, and that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about somebody who simply agrees with fascism. Now, this person, if they were fired for their job for even promoting fascism, or even on just saying like, I want an authoritarian government with nationalistic tendencies, if they were fired for that, that would fall, and they would be protected by free speech, because you can't be discriminated for the things you believe. For the same reason that I can't fire a trans person for being trans, is the same reason why I can't fire somebody for believing something.
You can help if you're a Nazi. You can't help if you're trans.
Well, you can help if you're a Christian. Does that mean you're allowed to fire people for being Christian or fire somebody for being a Muslim?
are Christians inherently violent and racist?
I could
Well,
argue.
I'm pretty sure
I could,
you can
I could
argue
probably
yes
make a
if
case
you.
that Islam is
Okay,
pretty
okay,
harmful.
Hold on.
How is it harmful?
I
It's
think-
the same.
What? Hold on,
Because
Worm's
it,
gotta
promo-
talk.
it
Worm's
promotes
trying to
it
talk.
promotes
Hey,
gender-
Worm.
hold on,
Hey,
can I-
Worm's trying to
Hold
talk.
on, Biggest. I think this has gone long enough. It's probably time to end the stream.
Okay.
Yeah, we've been here about 2 hours.
Yeah. This was a good convo, but it's been derailed for long enough, and we should end it. We can keep talking after, but I'm just gonna end it right now.
Okay.
Alright.
So, what?